to ask the Scottish Government regarding the application of equalities legislation, what its position is on the provision of single-sex spaces in public sector buildings, including hospitals.
Mr Cockab-Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Equality Act of 2010 allows separate and single-sex spaces when this is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. It is the responsibility of service providers to interpret and comply with the Act. The Equality and Human Rights Commission is responsible for enforcement. The Commission has produced specific guidance for organisations, such as statutory codes of practice and a guide for separate and single-sex service providers. The guidance also states that organisations may need to consider the impact of other legislation, such as legal requirements for health and safety in workplaces.
Rachel Hamilton.
Cockab-Stewart, the Minister, for that answer. Time and time again, Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government has shirked its responsibilities for ensuring the safety of women and girls. Even the First Minister is tone deaf to this issue. No woman should feel under pressure to undress in front of a male colleague. Presiding Officer, that is why women across Scotland are fed up with the SNP putting gender ideology before their safety. Will the Minister make an urgent, unequivocal statement supporting the rights of women working in public sector buildings who expect suitable single-sex facilities? Yes or no?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I have answered several questions on this issue, and I will refer and I fully support the law. The Equality Act 2010 is generally reserved, and the Equality and Human Rights Commission is the body that is responsible for enforcing the 2010 Act.
I think I've got a couple of supplementaries. They will both need to be brief. First, Ash Regan.
Almost 1 in 3 working women in Scotland are employed in the public sector, many in health and social care. The government has a duty to ensure that all policies across publicly funded bodies uphold legal and regulatory protections. So will the government now make a clear statement that women's same-sex provision is a legal obligation and gender self-ID is not the law in Scotland?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I thank the member for that contribution, and I would restate that under the Equality Act 2010 allows for separate and single-sex spaces when this is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. Thank you.
Briefly, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can the Minister give a guarantee that NHS Scotland policies ensure that staff are treated fairly and consistently and in line with the Equality Act when it comes to separate sex facilities?
Minister.
The Scottish Government has already stated that we expect all organisations to comply with the Equality Act 2010.
Thank you. Question